Good afternoon and good morning to the folks who are joining from the West Coast. These are interesting times, and the session that we have today is very relevant and interesting. By the way, as I said, my name is Pawan Jadhav. I'm the CEO of Latitude. And before introducing the other members, let me quickly just talk about the agenda. So what we are here today for, what the title suggests, and if you have gone through the content that we had sent as part of our webinar outreach, the main topic of our discussion is how do you set up, or what's the reason why you should set up the digital operating model considering COVID-19 and how COVID-19 is actually impacting that. So we will start with how COVID-19 is the super change agent. We'll talk about the unexpected experiment that happened in the last few months. And I'm sure it's very close to all our hearts. The other is, if we have to set up a digital operating model and during this COVID-19 situation, and even beyond that, what are the 6 characteristics that you have to consider or you have to make sure are there in the digital operating model? And then I have our customer, American Stock Transfer, here on the call as well. Alan Eddy, the CTO of American Stock Transfer, is here. He'll be talking about his side of the story of how they are establishing this digital operating model in their environment. And then we will quickly jump into the panel where my intention is to discuss this a little further and ask questions which are more relevant to what we are discussing here and see if there are any other thoughts that come out. So that's the intention of the panel. And then we'll open it for Q&A. So having said that, that's the panel for today. Apart from me, I have Alan Eddy, who's the EVP and CTO of American Stock Transfer. I also have John Walden, who's the CTO of Blue Prism Americas. So having said that, let me quickly, as a first part of it, talk about Latitude and what we do here at Latitude. So for the last 20 plus years, I have focused on, as someone who's at the front of digital transformation, I have focused on process excellence and automation. And this can be seen in how Latitude operates today. Latitude, as the name suggests, it stands for flexibility and freedom. Right? As a company, we want to have the latitude or freedom to create innovative solutions for our customers, but more importantly, create flexibility for our customers to do more value-adding work. Right? So that's the mission that we operate with. We are one of the top 5 pure-play award-winning intelligent process automation companies in the USA, and primarily focused on process automation. Our focus is financial services, insurance, and healthcare. And it's a no-brainer. There are a few teams that are running across these 3 industries. One is that they are heavily regulated. There's lots of digital work happening and lots of manual activity still happening. But most of it is knowledge work that happens within these industries. And that's one of the key reasons why we are focused on these 3 industries. So the technologies that we work today are more geared towards these kind of industries. Right. So having said that, let me talk about. I've indicated the digital operating model. So what exactly it is? It is a very simple framework, and you don't have to make it any more complicated than what I'm talking to you about right now. Is that any process, for that matter, always starts with information coming in. So on the left-hand side, if you see, these are the sources of information that come in. And it could be a lending process, it could be a claims process, it could be a medical review process. It could even be an accounts payable process. When the information comes in, the first and the foremost thing that you as an organization or operations team have to do is extract that information from these documents, or maybe an email, or maybe a chat, or a voice call. Once you extract that information, the next thing you have to figure out is if the next set of actions or steps are structured and rules-based, then you hand it over to a digital worker, right? A robotic process automation technology like Blue Prism. Or if you need human-in-the-loop scenarios to be taken care of because the data is so unstructured or the steps are so, they're not rules-based, then that's where you include a workflow management tool. Now, so from that perspective, we are focused on creating capabilities in data extraction, robotic process automation, and workflow. And all the data that comes out of it, you can analyze it, you can report on it, you can run artificial intelligence, machine learning models on it, etc. But the 3 pillars are primarily these. And Alan, in his case study of what's happening at American Stock Transfer, will talk about how he is using Blue Prism and other technologies in these 3 pillars to digitally transform his organization. So moving to the next one. So from the services standpoint, what we do is we help you establish that digital operating model. So whether it's initializing it or establishing it or stabilizing it. So right from tool selection to assessing the processes and finding the right process candidates to establishing the center of excellence and even establishing the process factory so that you run a stable delivery model for your enterprises. So having said that, let's jump into why we are here for. COVID-19. Did it turn out to be the super change agent? Right, and I would say yes, it did. In fact, there is a meme going around in the social circles where the question is, who led the digital transformation of your company? Was it the CEO? Was it your CTO? Or was it COVID-19? And in many scenarios, it was COVID-19 that pushed you to the edge, that forced you to digitally transform. And there are several examples of this. In fact, if you look at what's happening in the payroll protection program, which was launched by SBA, SBA processed 14-year worth of loans in 14 days. Could they have done it without technology? Could they have done it without using these transforming technologies or without automating their processes? And the impact of that was felt by not only the borrowers, but all the lenders who were making these billions of dollars of loans. So through these two phases, the government has put almost more than $600 billion of liquidity into the market within days, right, which was unheard of. So what's the unexpected experiment we are talking about? The picture here speaks for itself. What we have all gone through, whether you are on the side of where Latitude operates in, or if you're one of the ones who actually face the brunt, this is the kind of situation we actually went through. But not sure about Marty, but we happen to be there. Right? And what did the people who were actually handling these operations had to go through? They had to deal with disaster recovery. That's great, right? So you have your documentation in place and you have all your plans in place. So you can still deal with disaster recovery. But on top of that, you have to also deal with business continuity, right? And then if that was not enough, you also had to scale and to handle something that you had never handled. If that was not enough, you had to do it all at the same time for an unknown duration. So how does one prepare for it? Right? This was completely unprecedented. This was something that no one thought about. And is this going to be the last time this is going to happen? Absolutely not. You may have another phase of COVID-19 that may come in the next few months, or maybe we have another pandemic. So the question that we ask is, how do you make sure you create a digital operating model which is pandemic ready? What are the characteristics of these the digital operating model? And I cover this in very detail in my article, which I have written, which is there on LinkedIn, in my personal feed, as well as on our website, Latitude website. So as a follow-up email, we'll be sending that article to you. So feel free to read that. But there are 6 characteristics of this digital operating model to make sure that you are able to operate anytime, anywhere, right? Those are the 2 very critical terms that you have to focus on. How do you operate anytime, anywhere? And one of the first ones is virtual everything. So it should be able to take care of the virtual way of working. McKinsey Consumer Sentiment Analysis Report, which was published a few weeks back, indicates that the consumers are starting to adopt new behaviors, primarily because of what we are going through. And that includes shopping on new websites, shopping at absolutely new grocery store, or adopting curbside pickups. You talk about video conferencing, you talk about telemedicine, etc. It also goes on to say that these behaviors are here to stay. So they're not going to go away. These behaviors are here to stay. In fact, customers are now going to start demanding these things. They'll become the norm. This is also very true in the workplace environment. We are doing everything virtually. All the example that I gave about that $600 billion of loans being made, all of those loans were made by the lenders using staff that was working remotely, getting the loan applications from the borrowers who are working remotely, virtually. The meetings, the operations, the customer support, even the white glove service, media, process assessment workshops. We are running process assessment workshops for our customers. Typically, we never thought that we'll be running process assessment workshops of a day or two remotely, right? We are doing that remotely and very successfully, in fact. You may have heard of acquisitions that have happened and the entire due diligence was done remotely. Right, the interview, sales presentations, the list goes on, but everything is going to be virtual. TCS, a large consulting firm, announced that 75% of its 350,000 employees, that is 75% of its 350,000 employees will start working remotely by 2025. So you can imagine what's going to happen to the commercial real estate. But customers are discovering that remote working is not that bad. In fact, it's good. And maybe be able to acquire talented employees who really want to work remotely. So that's one of the themes that you have to make sure that the digital operating model is able to cover. The second is super optimal efficiency. So why do I use these objectives back to back? And the reason why I say that, we talk about efficiency, we talk about optimal efficiency, but here in these scenarios, we have only so many nurses, we have only so many claims professionals, we have so many loan servicers. And now they are supposed to handle this unprecedented load. Should we be asking them to do any manual activity? Should we be asking them to do any non-value adding work? And that's where the super optimal efficiency comes in. So the whole focus should be your digital operating model should be able to take care of all the manual activities and let them the skills are very limited. So let them just ask us to let us ask them to use their skills for the right purpose. Let's not squander it away, right? So that's one of the things that you have to make sure that it provides. The third is dynamic capacity and agility. So can I deploy capacity dynamically or in minutes when I'm faced with unprecedented demand? So I know that this is not going to be the norm. I know that maybe after this, things will come back to normal, but these situations will come back again. So is your digital operating model ready to do that? I'll give you a few examples by what I mean by dynamic capacity. Verizon consumers are making 800 million calls a day now. This was seen once a year on Mother's Day. Now it is happening on a daily basis. Microsoft Teams handled 2.7 billion minutes of calls on March 31, just one day. And what Microsoft Teams is also noticing is that earlier 20% of the calls were video calls, but now that has doubled. 41% of the calls are video calls. People are more comfortable doing video calls. I've already talked about SBA. Right? So the first 349 billion in the phase one was made in a matter of a week. Mortgage forbearance is another area that is becoming a key area for focus. One of our customers, in fact, received 80,000 requests for mortgage forbearance in a matter of days. And as you realize, if the situation doesn't improve, or if some portion of this is going to fall out, and we are going to have foreclosures, and that will create additional demand. So how do you take care of all of that? Everything as a service. You can only create dynamic capacity and agility in these unprecedented times if the service that you're consuming is as a service and the product that you're offering is as a service. So make sure that you're able to create these kind of capabilities, and this is only possible if you are providing it on the cloud and the underlying infrastructure is on the cloud, right? And so you would have seen the importance of cloud going up quite a bit. Self-service, this is one of the most important aspects that we have been talking to our customers is, and I've faced this personally. When we went through the loan service, the loan program, SBA PPP program, it was a black hole. I sent my application for Latitude, and we never got any update from anyone. And that was the story all across. If only I had the self-service capability to find out what the statuses are. If there was a self-service capability to get the notifications to me when the loan servicing, the loan was moving from one stage to the other. So why do you need human intervention for opening a bank, or sending a health service claim, or finding status of a loan, or raising billing concerns, or asking for mortgage forbearance? What we are recommending to customers is have the bot first policy. Why do you even need a human intervention when there is no need? Let humans and let your employees add value. Let they be more focused on providing value to the customers rather than taking care of the mundane requests. Using portals, chatbots, workflow, robotic process automation, data extraction, the digital operating model that I talked about, you can automate many of these processes. There's always that 80-20 rule. 20% of the requests drive 80% of the volume. Focus on addressing this 20%. You may not be 100% automated, but you know that you have taken care of 80% of the headache. Customers are used to it, by the way. So even if I was getting that white glove service with a human touch, in fact, I right now want a self-service capability where I can just click on a couple of buttons on my mobile device or on the website, and I'm able to do it. I expect it and I demand it. So that's the consumer behavior that we're talking about. And the last but not the least, while you're running all this remote environment, while you're running all the digital operating model, where you're not able to see any of your employees physically, you do not know exactly what they're doing. And that's where the end-to-end visibility comes in. So how do you make sure that you have an orchestration layer that is bringing everything together, your digital workers, your human workers, your applications, your customers, and your vendors, so that you have a complete end-to-end visibility. You have knowledge of what is happening at any given point in time. Right? So when you're running your business on Excel sheets, emails, text messages, and hands-on activities, you do not have that end-to-end visibility. And you cannot survive in a remote world with that kind of digital operating model. So having said that, I just wanted to give you a view of what those 4 pandemic-ready solutions may look like. Right? And I would call, if you have to use this term in future, is you have to ask that question to your teams: is this process pandemic ready? Right? So for instance, the SBA loan solutions that we launched, right from processing a loan to we are getting into the loan forgiveness phase, it is all driven digitally, and we processed almost $6 billion of loans for our customers, all digitally, nothing, and all remotely. And the same is going to happen on the loan forgiveness side. So the idea is, again, if you look at the diagram there, how do you combine those 3-4 technologies so that you are bringing everything together, including humans, and you have an end-to-end view of that. Mortgage forbearance solution. You can deploy these conversations, the chatbots, the web portals, the IVRs, all of them on the cloud. You can build the rules in the back end. You can combine your contact center through cognitive capabilities, and you have taken care of self-service capability where you do not have to staff so many people to take care of these calls. So you move from that to what is going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. You again combine those technologies, put it on the cloud so that you can take care of the maximum. You don't have to be ideal. What you have to do is attack the 20% of the causation factors, and that will take care of 80% of the volume. Another example is of a cognitive call center solution powered by chatbot, where majority of the questions, which are very, very straightforward, and in many cases could be cognitive as well, can be handled through the self-service capability, which you have to provide to your customers. And in cases where you have to, so you're talking about an omni-channel experience where if your customers have to really talk to an agent, they can still talk to the agents, but you have this everything set up on the cloud so that your contact centers agents can work from anywhere at any time, and your customers are still serviced. Another example is an accounts payable solution, where you are receiving all the invoices, data is getting extracted, they're flowing through a workflow and interact with your backend systems. So having said that, I think I've set the stage in terms of the context as well as what's coming. I hand it over to Alan, where Alan will talk about the case study, a live example of how Alan is handling this in his organization, American Stock Transfer. Alan.
Hi, Pawan. Thanks very much. I'm Alan Eddy. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for AST. If you can go to the next slide, please. I want to tell you a little bit about AST, first of all, just so you can get the context. But I want to tell you really about our challenges, our non-digital challenges, what we've had to do with COVID-19, and then finish off with what our priorities are at AST. But first of all, AST is a company that deals and manages for our clients their entire life cycle. So we are a company that faces off against all companies, whether private or public. And this little circle you see in front of you really describes what we see as the life cycle of a company. So you might be a small company starting out as a private company. So we have a new solution, which I'll talk about later, for private companies. If those private companies, many of them want to go public. Many don't, of course. but many do want to go public, so they will go through with an initial public offering. So we help those companies prepare for IPO. We execute it for them, and we help them with any equity plan administration they may want to do and when they're public. And then when they are public, every public company in the US in particular must have something called a transfer agent, and we have a transfer agent for public companies. We're one of the top 2 in the US, and what we do for those companies is basically manage their ownership, their shareholders for them. And we do equity plan solutions. We help individuals manage, get their dividends, their statements. You want to sell shares, you want to buy shares, and so on. We also help public companies with who owns them, and I'll talk about that in a second. We help them with their annual meetings, and we help them with their various dividend processes, corporate action processes, as well as help them with regulatory and tax reporting. Of course, some companies may need some restructuring. Some companies go into bankruptcy. Clearly, with this pandemic, there's been a bit of a rise in that. So AST helps companies restructure and help companies go through that process. And what we found though, that some companies go around the circle more than once. Some companies go through private, IPO, public, bankruptcy, back to private, back to IPO. So the circle keeps on going. You go to the next slide, please. So we talked about 2 or 3 things here to give you a context. So I said we start with private companies. So we have a new software as a service product called Estrella, which launched for everyone, any client who wants to use it last month. Very proud of it. We've just built it. It allows private companies really to, again, manage their ownership interests through something called cap tables. So if you're a small company, you may want to offer employees a share in your company to entice them on board. And as a company grows, your individual ownership value grows as well. So Estrella is all about helping those companies grow through our software, and we automate things to a SaaS-based solution. And again, we help them with reporting, with their compliance, with their options and awards and so on. And also modeling associated with when private companies want to exit, and through all the life cycles of our private company, through all the various funding rounds. So that's Estrella, launched last month, very proud of it. Software as a service, it's one thing we do. On the next slide, we talked about public companies, and if you're a public company, knowing your ownership of your company is super important. And what we do with Issuer Central, and we're the only company who does this, is we pull together all the ownership data associated with that company, whether it's the data that we, AST, know about you as your transfer agent, or whether it's other data associated with other shares outside AST's control. And we help companies with their ownership from Section 13 filings, Section 16 filings. We pull together a bunch of data from various different sources in one place that allows companies to track their ownership. And that's important when it comes to times like these, when perhaps your stock's in flux. You want to make sure that you don't have any activist investors on board, or if you do, what they're doing, why they want, what they're looking for. And Issuer Central, especially in times of change like this, is a super important tool for corporations. The next slide really talks about another part of our public company offerings, which is really about helping companies. In this case, we have a tool for mutual funds for proxy tabulation. So every public company will has AGMs, as I mentioned, and they will have things that the board want their shareholders to vote on. And if you own shares yourself, you will see every year probably a need for you to vote on certain resolutions coming from the board. Now, our Proxy IQ platform here is blockchain-based. As I should have said, Estrella is also blockchain-based. Our Proxy IQ platform is blockchain-based, so all the votes associated with those proxies are tabulated in the blockchain. It predicts how the vote that the board are looking for is being acquired, and what you may have to do to get to the board resolution that you want. So we have, this is another great tool, brand new tool form from AST, really helping companies tabulate their votes. Now, yeah, next slide, thank you. As I mentioned, we have some challenges. One of them is the non-digital challenge. So being a transfer agent, we try and help our clients, our individual shareholders in particular, through all sorts of communications that they want to deal with this by, whether it's paper, we get a lot of forms sent to us, we get a lot of written documentation, we get a lot of emails, we get faxes. It's 2020, but we still get faxes, and a lot of structured and unstructured data. So we have a lot of paper that we're having to process. And we also have a lot of voice. So our call centers deal with a lot of people calling us for, could be anything from address changes to balances on their accounts to where is my dividend, etc. And basically managing those channels for our clients is important. AST is a digitally enabled, is a technology enabled company, but we still have to deal with this unstructured data. And I'll talk about that in a second. On the next page, we also have COVID-19, of course. And AST, we are spread across the US, but predominantly based in New York. So we have offices in Manhattan, we have offices in Jersey, we have offices, a couple of offices in Brooklyn. So, and of course, COVID-19, as everyone is aware, had quite a horrible and terrible ramifications for New York. And we've had to move very quickly as a firm to move our workforce to be able to work from home. Now, it's quite difficult because, as I said, we had all this paper. We've had people who traditionally have never worked from home, and we've had to educate them and equip them for that remote work. So we had hundreds of people we had to move into their homes to be productive and keep them safe during this pandemic. So we've been very busy, as I'm sure most firms have been. Those on this call will be similarly proud of their achievements. And we've had people now working from home who have never worked from home before. So we've been able to do that. Our paper challenge, of course, still existed. We get thousands of pieces of mail per day to process. And so what we've had to do with this COVID-19 challenge is accelerate or reprioritize some of the things we had in the works for our digitalization program. Now, we've been working with Blue Prism and Latitude and other digitalization firms for a while now to do some of these things. We had to reshuffle the deck a little bit with the COVID-19 challenge. So we accelerated basically how we enable people to work remotely. So instead of people being in the office and processing paper or email, we now have that all digitized, and people can now do that remotely. And that was done within 5 weeks. And it was quite astonishing how quickly we were able to do that. And we'll talk about some of those things later. But now, when COVID-19 is gone, I think we'll all be delighted, of course. But I think the way we've been able to accelerate some of these digitization initiatives gives AST a lot of options about how we want to operate going forward. Do we necessarily want to have such a large workforce from home? Do we want to have as many people in the offices? Again, those are decisions we have to make, but at least we have a choice now. And the next slide. So next slide, our priorities really is we want to service our clients in the best way by using technology. We want to get that customer satisfaction, retain the high levels of customer satisfaction, and we're increased digitalization, and we're using tools such as I say, Blue Prism, and using firms as Latitude to help us get there. We've got SaaS products such as Estrella for private markets. We do see that as a way to help our clients be more self-starting and in control of their own processing flow. We're using RPA partly for cost savings, but a lot of the reasons for driving consistency, accuracy, and also speed, the responsiveness. These machines can turn around things very quickly. And in a time of when people are working remotely, these are great advantages. We're also using imaging and machine learning to help automate some of those non-digital challenges. But ultimately, we want our customers to interact with us whichever way they want, whether it's through paper, email, voice, mobile, or web, and probably even fax, as I mentioned at the start. But we want to do it in a way that's seamless, that's efficient, and is accurate, all about customer satisfaction. So that's AST, and that's some of the things we've been doing over the last few months. Pawan, back to you.
Thank you, Alan. That was awesome, and I think it presents and it sets the context for the panel discussion. So you heard, Alan, you heard what's going on, and you touched on various aspects. You heard from a solution and a system integrator standpoint what we are talking about. But I would also like to invite now John to join the panel, and I want to explore these themes a little further and go a little bit in detail. I have 6 themes in total, and depending on the time, we'll try to explore all these 6. But if the time doesn't permit, I'll just try to prioritize this. And as we get into this discussion, I just want to make sure that it's not only about robotic process automation. It is about the digital operating model. Robotic process automation is a cornerstone of that digital operating model. And what Blue Prism does, and John will allude to that as well, is it creates that digital ecosystem for you to automate all your processes, right, from start to finish. So let me get into the themes. And so one of the things that I would like to explore, John and Alan, and I would like to question you regarding this theme is, so when you talk about white glove versus self-service, and I'm sure, Alan, in your world, you have this, right, the white glove service where you have critical customers, and I'm sure all customers here also have those critical customers that you have to look out for. So it was all about having a human available to me at all times, making my life easier, making me feel important and comfortable. That's what defined luxury. Now, is this line blurring, and are customers expecting technology to just do it? Is this thinking moving more towards the more technology does it for me, the more luxurious I feel? Right? And so, Alan, for the question for you would be, would you agree with this? And are you seeing that as the case? Are you driving your organization towards it? Are you looking at RPA or other related technologies to do that for you, or are you primarily focused on RPA as a cost-saving tool? So that would be that question. And John, from your perspective, how are you looking at all of this thing? I'm sure you have stories where RPA is not only being used as a mechanism to save effort, but also to drive better customer experience. So if you could highlight, and if you can provide your perspective on this aspect, that would be great. John, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't sure if Alan, you directed that to both of us. Not a problem at all. So, my perspective of luxury always ends up being one of service. When we were all traveling, as it were, the airlines definitely gave people who were traveling more service, and you had people you could call directly. But even though I had the ability to call somebody directly, self-service was still critical to me to feel part of that. So when I talk and think about luxury in general, it really comes down to getting accomplished what I need to be accomplished as easily as possible. And from that perspective, when you talk about in one of your articles about bot first capability, I think that's really critical to understand, because if I can be serviced via a self-service mode, I'm going to choose to do that, and that's a personal choice. But that also frees people up, or frees people to be available to me if other people are doing that as well, so that when there's an exception, when there's something that's critical that I need to, the one-off type elements, I do have the ability to talk to a person, and that's really where RPA plays a role. You're very familiar with the fact that most organizations are looking at RPA, and they're considering one of the primary measurements are hours returned back to the business, and those hours are realistically able to provide capability back to the business to be able to support people that do have other needs beyond what are normal. But in the end, service is really what matters, whether it's self-service or white glove. As long as I can get accomplished what I need to, then I'm happy and my customers are happy, and RPA is a great way to do that. Across both giving hours back to people to be able to do that, as well as just being able to accomplish those things in the omni-channel approach.
And John, it's Alan
Thank
here.
you,
And John, yeah, and John, you said it yourself, right? It all depends on what the customer wants. I think white glove or self-service, it depends on you as an individual, what you prefer. Some people prefer self-service. Some people prefer a bit more of a human touch, right? So we want to be able to, in AST, we want to be able to service the customer in whichever way they want to work. So some clients, as I mentioned, prefer to work with a person at the end of the phone. Some people like paper mail. Some people like self-service. Some people like mobile. So what is important for me at AST is that we can deliver this efficiently and accurately and timely, right? And technology is key to that. And some of these tools that we've described already are key to that. So delivering it in a way that's accurate, timely, and efficient. But we want to be able to give a white glove or self-service. Just it's all about the client. What do they want? And we'll try and meet those needs as efficiently as we can.
Great. Now, I think what Alan, you indicated is that this is here to stay. People are going to demand that human touch. And what I'm also hearing from this discussion is that maybe one is feeding into another, right? So for instance, if you take care of the manual activities and convert that into self-service, then maybe you actually can provide white glove service the way it's supposed to be provided. Because I have been part of certain white glove services which doesn't feel like white glove. So maybe if employees have more time, they can actually give me white glove service, right? So that's that was good. Thank you. Let's talk about another aspect that Alan, you touched about was, in 5 days, you were able to accomplish what you accomplished when you had to move your people around and you had to take care of all the mail that was coming in. So there was this motivation, and we achieved the impossible. And when I say we, it's everyone achieved the impossible in their sectors. Everyone was super motivated. They were more productive, more driven. Was it just the motivation at some unconscious level because of the unprecedented circumstances, or can the executives learn some experience and sustain this productivity, maybe a part of this forever? And more importantly, we always thought, let's take baby steps or get small incremental gains, but knowing what you know now of human capability, can we straight away go to giant gains and then you know what your employees are capable of? So Alan, the question to you is that the learning that you have, and how are you thinking about this now that you've gone through one such exercise of what you can achieve?
Yeah. I mean, you said 5 days. I mean, if only it was 5 days, right? It was 5 weeks. So 5 weeks was astonishing. We implemented this digitalization solution in 5 weeks. Now, it helped, of course, that some of the basics were already in place. You just can't spin up some things that quickly. It takes time, right? But we had the basics there already. Yeah. But what really helped, I think, was the motivation and the simple message about what we were trying to achieve. We wanted to stop people having to come into the office to process mail, basically. We wanted them to be safe. It was a super motivator for everyone, and it allowed us to make fast decisions because we were talking about people's safety. And that was key, right? So a shared understanding of the rationale and the motivation. So inspiring people and then clearly, and very importantly, trusting people to make it happen. So a simple message, we let people get on with it. And this is a lot of what we try and do now in AST. We're trying to run pretty much everything in an agile way in cross-functional teams. And part of doing that is not just the methodology. It's allowing people to get on with it, allowing the trust for those teams to make their own decisions and plans. So those are the key messages, I think. It's simple messages. It's shared understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and then just letting people get on with it and trusting them to deliver. And I think people rise, in my experience, people rise to those motivations. And that's what we can learn from this. We had 5 weeks, clear message, really good objectives, and that's what we need to drive forward for other programs.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very strong learning, and that's the learning on my side as well of what can be achieved by those simple goals and strong message and making sure that the employees are working at that motivation level. So John, from your perspective, you wear multiple hats, but one of the major roles for you is to learn from the market and work on the product features to be launched in the coming months and years for Blue Prism. Do you think, based on what you know of human potential now, you can launch more robotic potential? So is human potential feeding the more robotic potential fairly quickly? Are you thinking on those lines?
Absolutely, we're thinking on those lines. You know, the aspect of what COVID has done has ended up creating a lot of demand for us. You know, you talked earlier about the PPP aspect of being able to do 14 years of loans in a matter of weeks. That wasn't even something we would have considered before that, but that shows you the potential of being able to spin up these digital workers. You know, another large company we work with really recognized what was going on and recognized they had a lot of processes that they had to adjust or make adjustments to as a result of this. And so some of the aspects of product parts that we were already looking at, things like the ALM, the life cycle management of processes, is something that we were already looking at with Blue Prism Cloud, but has definitely been reiterated to us the need to be able to have those adjustments quickly, and we've tried to respond to them, you know, doing all sorts of things for our customers, for having, you know, COVID help with CDC and some other organizations. It's really a matter of recognizing that because of the state of urgency that we've been living in, it has definitely helped us to recognize and look at the need for digital workforce and how we can better that digital workforce moving forward.
That's great. So the one of the things that we have noticed, and this is something that I feel it's here to stay. But let's talk about this coexistence of digital workers versus humans. There has been the fear that RPA is taking away jobs, and these technologies in general. If you look at digital operating model itself, we ended up actually saving jobs, and in many instances saving lives during this pandemic. So are you seeing this shift in mindset in employees who are actually performing these tasks? Because this fear resides at that level. Are you seeing that this fear is going away, at least now and maybe forever, because they are being helped by this digital transformation? Are you noticing that, and are you seeing that? And maybe that question, maybe Alan, you can handle first, and John, you can go next.
I think RPA, the benefits of RPA are manifold. I mean, making things more efficient, removing manual processes clearly is always part of reasons why companies will choose RPA. So I think we'll always have that fear, if you call it fear, persisting. But efficiency is a key driver. But for ASD, it's also about customer satisfaction. It's about the consistency and the reliability and the speed of delivering a service. So RPA and other digitalization technologies have recently been keeping our staff safe, as I mentioned, and been able to deliver predictably. And that's great for our clients during these unprecedented times. So I think these technologies is not just about efficiencies, although that's important. It's also about delivering consistent customer service, which is super important for ASD.
So I'm going to go ahead and hop in here because I actually struggle with the whole idea of the versus component, because I was speaking on a learning forum the other day for a human capital conference, and I always talk specifically about it's not digital versus human. And I know a lot of pundits out there, especially on the LinkedIn and otherwise, have talked about the loss of jobs, and it's something that generically at Blue Prism we certainly have not seen. I always talk about work accomplishment, and accomplished work means that you have to work together, both digital and human. I often refer to it as a unified workforce, recognizing most organizations are very good about assigning work to the most appropriate resource. This is not just about technology. This is really about accomplishing work. And, I've got one company that I was talking to, they had to lay off 84% of their staff. Well, not only do you have to go through the process of doing all the work to rescind credentials, to notify all these people and everything else, but you're ending up with a huge amount of backlog that now exists for work that's piling up while they have been furloughed. Without some form of digital capability, without them being available to assign some of this work to while these people are being furloughed for their safety and for the viability of the organization, that means that when these people come back, they would have a huge amount of tasks and work to accomplish for what had been avoided while they were out, what is now being demanded that they have pent up demand for. And it's really that you recognize that by having a workforce that's both digital and human, you can assign and get rid of the majority of work to a digital, and then the humans can give you that white glove service that we were talking about for those that are exceptions, for those that really demand the empathy and interactivity. And you can't do that if you're just worried about a huge backlog of busy work in general.
That's an excellent point, right? Yep. So in fact, digital workers helping humans and we're working in coexistence. We are seeing that that's happening everywhere, right? So in fact, in our customers where they process these thousands of loans in a matter of days, the loan servicers who actually process those loans came and thanked us quite a bit because they were already working 18-hour days. If this wasn't there, this coexistence wasn't there, it would have been impossible for them to handle what they were handling. Having said that, let's talk about something that was not visible to you before and is now visible because COVID-19 made that is forcing you to look closer and look deeper. So my question there is, John, are you seeing more avenues, use cases, industries opening up that you thought may not have the potential that where you can push technology that is happened in the recent times?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been handling things from organizations that have been related to testing, related to areas of, I mean, even getting people back to work. I had a relatively small organization who was concerned about bringing people back in, as well as the personal component. And we have thermal cameras that are now being used by digital workers so that people get scanned when they walk in. They recognize the value of this. They don't have to necessarily go and have somebody, challenging them. Do you feel sick or otherwise? It's just monitored and verified. And so those types of things are things we hadn't even really thought about before from that perspective, as well as, we've had numerous companies come to us and say, listen, we have this unprecedented issue. It is making it a lot easier to justify within the bounds of our organization. But we also recognize that this is something that may be a little bit of a burst. Can you help and assist with us with additional digital workers during this time period? And we're doing all of these things to be able to support everybody during these unprecedented times.
And Alan, what's your view on this? Have you discovered something that you were not aware before, and that has now become the focus?
Well, I just think it's back to this circumstances in which we find ourselves, where the normal modes of working are not there, right? We're not able to meet in an office, and I think automation through technology is key to help alleviate some of those issues. I think the technology has always been about automating manual tasks, right? I mean, I was looking at the SpaceX dock at the International Space Station just last week, which was astonishing, right? And all that was done, that was all automating, all automation, right? So in technology, we automate things that were previously manual done, and I think we're going to see more and more of that coming along, right? And leaving more and more space, as we talked about, for more and more of a white glove service. And I think we're going to keep seeing these things. I'm very keen on machine learning. I think that's going to have a big impact to how we process basically some of the unstructured problems we have right now. And I think we'll see that driving automation beyond levels that we have seen historically as well. And then software as a service. I mean, I talked about our Strela platform. Good example of creating cost-effective solutions for clients, and in this case for private companies. So I think technology, this is when technology shines, right? It's when we have these big problems, different types of things to solve, and what we're trying to solve right now is a world where people are not in offices and the work still comes in every day.
Yeah, you're so right, because technology has made giant leaps when there have been disasters, right? You talk about world wars, or you talk about financial meltdown, you talk about the pandemic. You take all these disasters is when technology has been pushed to the limit, and that's where it has made a giant leap. So you're absolutely right. This is, I think, forcing all the technologists in the right direction to solve these problems. And the next two questions primarily.
Sorry, just one thing before we move on, if you don't mind. Yeah, that point about these massive changes support large innovation. This is what we see in the private world as well. In the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of private companies were set up after that in response to some of the problems that were made visible through the crisis. And I think we'll see the same here, right? We'll see a lot of private companies forming because of some of the challenges we've had now, right? This is a problem no one's seen in their lifetime, and I think we'll see a lot of private companies reacting and responding to those new opportunities.
Yeah, to add to it further, I just heard from one of our customers that they processed their 1 millionth claim coming directly from telehealth and telemedicine. And there was a big claim made by this company that this is here to stay. So that's an industry that's trying to make its way and trying to push the boundaries. But I think this pandemic is going to make that a norm, right? We are going to continue to expect that. So that's another example. But in the interest of time, let me move to the next theme that I'll explore, and maybe I'll stop after a few minutes here, is one of commoditization, right? And this is something that maybe we addressed already. But if you look at it as a technology system integrator or solutions provider latitude, or maybe from a Blue Prism perspective, this is one thing that we always want to stay away from. We don't want to provide services in the commoditized area, but it also for technology to move forward, commoditization is absolutely necessary, because you have to have commoditization. That's when people start talking about innovation more, because it's all driven by this commoditization. This is what I believe. So my question here is, Alan, do you feel that this is you are seeing that happening in the current set of technologies? And you alluded to machine learning and artificial intelligence just a couple of minutes back. But can you speak a little bit about this aspect from a CTO standpoint?
From a future standpoint, well, the future, right? The future is hard to see, but let's say in the next 5 years, I think we'll still see paper, we'll still see voice. Everyone won't automatically move on to brand new digital technologies. So I think those things will still persist, although probably reduce in scale. So I think machine learning, artificial intelligence will be key to help make those things more seamless. And that's just in how we interact right now. But if I were to look at the future from a business point of view, as I said, AST is in the business of managing a company through its whole life cycle. And I think we'll see digital securities underpinning more and more companies. We talked about private companies, we talked about public companies, and I think smaller companies, especially, fast-growing companies, will probably evolve to using more and more digital securities. And I think AST, we're looking at this actively as well as a way of thinking about the future, evolving along with the needs of these companies. So I would say if you look at the future, I would say we'll still have some of the same problems we have today. We'll have better technologies to fix them, but we'll also have a different way of how companies want us to help them as well. So we will be reacting to that.
Wonderful. John, what do you feel? Maybe you can address both these aspects: the commoditization that is challenging you, and maybe what you see in future. And I'll ask you to do that in the next 30 to 45 seconds.
Not a problem at all.
Maybe a bot again.
The commoditization is bound to happen. And when we first introduced RPA, I was having to do a lot of education, just make people familiar with it. The fact that it has now become a common 3-letter acronym is huge, huge both for organizations as a whole, as well as for companies to be able to see what is available to the future. We've talked a lot about the aspect of time being returned to, and innovation is really one of the key items that help drag us to the future. Back in the 60s, when everybody was talking about, things like Star Trek and Star Wars and those types of things, you know, we laughed at the idea of having communicators in your pockets, and yet now, you know, we carry around more technology in our pockets than originally put the first man on the moon, sort of tying in, you know, the whole idea of the space delivery and what happened there from an automation perspective. But I think as we look at the future, the idea of AI and ML have to be applied and have to provide that innovation cycle for people. And we can't really define AI and ML unless it's being defined within the bounds of a process, within the bounds of some accomplishment. Otherwise, it just becomes way too nebulous. It becomes a problem looking for a solution as compared to what I think RPA and the commoditization of RPA really provides. And that is, you define what the problem is, we'll find a way to deliver on it at scale by using digital workers.
Great. Oh, that was awesome discussion. I felt that I would just want to continue discussing this with you, the two of you, but in the interest of time, let me stop here. And Sharita, do we have any questions that we want to pick up, maybe a couple of them before we hit the top of the hour?
Yeah, thank you, Pawan. Unfortunately, due to our timing on today's webinar, we will compile all questions and answers and have to distribute them via email following. But if you have watched this video of today's webinar, please feel free, and you have questions after the fact, please feel free to send an email to Pawan, and that's pawan.jahab@latitude.com. Let's turn back to Pawan for his final thoughts on today's webinar, and then we'll close from there. Thank you, Pawan.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And thank you for the audience, and thank you, John and Alan, for participating in this discussion. I feel this discussion will continue. All of us are going to go back and are going to discuss how this is going to impact. And what we are expecting is that through the digital channels, we will continue these discussions as well. So as a next webinar, we are working on how to actually implement this digital operating model that we talked about. And there's an intelligent automation crash course, which basically talks about how do we take each of these components and implement that within the organization, and how do you create that roadmap, and how to achieve success in doing this. So this is, here we discussed why we need it. Now we will be moving to how to establish that. So just keep an eye on an email us, which will be talking about the next steps and the dates in that regard. Most probably we'll be doing this in the month of July. Thank you very much for your time, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. A copy of this recording will be made available via a post-webinar email. On behalf of Blue Prism, Latitude, and our guest speaker, AST, thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.